This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. I mean, the news keeps getting worse for Deshaun Watson when it comes to this case and how serious this investigation is on this case. Mike Florio did a video about this that I want to check out and react to, where he is kind of pointing out some of the more fine details of the legal proceedings that are going on. So let's do that.
In a case like this, though, when you consider the football side of it, the NFL side of it, the Browns side of it, man, there's a lot of value, potentially, in writing a very large check to make this case go away. More so than whatever, even if everything that's alleged is true, there's a certain value that the civil justice system would apply to that. That's how it works. The jury decides how much must be paid to rectify the thing that happened. When you put $92 million in guaranteed salary on top of that, it takes on a different vibe. And that's what's going on here. And the one thing I've been trying to find out, and I think the lack of a clear answer tells me what the answer is. We talked about the Deshaun Watson contract. Paragraph 42 is the key language. I've had it since he signed it because I wanted to know, how do they navigate this coming suspension? He had an 11-game suspension in 2022. Does that wipe out all these guarantees?
Another thing to note here, because I know people have been passing around that it's been weird that the contract details just now got out. These contract details have been out for a while, and it's kind of pretty normal with a lot of NFL contracts get out.
Well, no. There are certain things that are carved out from the language that could nullify his guarantees. And it all comes down to this. There was a list provided of claims to the Browns. It's not part of the contract. It's a separate document. A list of claimants, plaintiffs, individuals who might accuse or who have accused Deshaun Watson of wrongdoing. All those names on the list, if he's punished, if he's in any trouble of any kind, suspended, charged, whatever, Browns can't do anything about it. But for anyone not on that list, that's when the language of the contract activates. That's when Deshaun Watson potentially has $92 million in salary from 2025 and 2026, now fully guaranteed, voided, released, and gone. This is the silver bullet that the Browns might have been. I know Browns fans are hoping for it. They'd like to get out from under this contract. So that adds extra value to the settlement before the lawsuit is filed. It adds extra value now because, folks, the NFL's investigation goes nowhere without the cooperation of the accuser. Nowhere. And it's perfectly appropriate for Deshaun Watson to reach an agreement with the accuser, part of which is she agrees in exchange for the money that she would get as part of this arm's length contractual negotiation. She's not talking to anybody about this.
That part of it, adding that all together, puts a lot of context in what's going on with Deshaun Watson. And it feels like as every day goes on, it is more and more likely that this accusation is something that is going to get him suspended, in my opinion. The reason I think that is the nature of the accusation, the seriousness of the accusation, and then this that just broke here, right? We just talked about it with Mike Florio. He just talked about it on that video. There's a lot of incentive for Deshaun Watson, for Rusty Harden, and maybe even the Browns, depending on where they're at. But definitely Deshaun Watson, Rusty Harden, to throw a lot of money at getting a settlement. Because if you get a settlement right now, that means that she is not going to testify to the NFL. And this investigation with the NFL goes nowhere. Your guaranteed money is safe because the NFL is not likely to suspend you if they can't interview her to get this investigation going. They have no subpoena power. So all the incentive in the world to get a settlement done with this woman is here. And what broke today, now it might be part of their settlement negotiations. It's law. We know how law is. It can get very twisty, and it can get very negotiating. So maybe that's the case. But from what we heard today, Deshaun Watson's accuser intends to interview with the NFL in 2 weeks. Now, there are a couple of things that pop my eyes in this one. Also, has a pertinent video, Tony Busby tells Pro Football Talk. Now, in this case, and we've been familiar with this case for far too long, we know that Tony Busby is a quite interesting character in all this, right? Not the most trustworthy character. And it is interesting that they told the world they're going to do this in 2 weeks. It's almost like they're putting a deadline out for Deshaun Watson and his camp to come to a settlement. Like, that's what it feels like to me. Now, the pertinent video part, that feels like law speak. I don't think there's a video of Deshaun Watson committing these acts. I think there's video that could implicate that Deshaun Watson was in the area during this, but who knows? They say they got pertinent video and that the accuser intends to cooperate with the NFL's investigation. Ultimately, we're going to have to wait 2 weeks to see if she ultimately does cooperate with the NFL's investigation or if we hear about a settlement sometime between now and 2 weeks. Both scenarios wouldn't surprise me. It seems like if the accuser does interview with the NFL, this could be something that gets him suspended because now they have an actual reason to suspend him. They have an actual investigation that they have under their hands with this. So that is the new news that broke with Deshaun Watson. Again, if you're wondering what's the deal with the contract, if he gets suspended, there's two questions you got to ask. Is he going to get suspended by the NFL? If he gets suspended by the NFL, then is there precedent for guaranteed money being washed away because of a suspension and that being a clause in the contract? Remember, you can put anything in a contract and anybody can sign it, but that doesn't mean that you can make anybody do anything just because you put it in a contract, right? There's a lot of things in a lot of contracts that are not enforceable. The question is that enforceable? Is voiding the rest of that contract because of a suspension enforceable? In my opinion, I think it is, because there's precedent in the NFL of that happening. Randy Gregory got suspended, got his guaranteed wiped. Like, it is a standard practice, is what the NFL can argue, to void guarantees if a player gets suspended. It's standard practice in the NFL. So if this does go to a court, it's very unlikely that a court picks this case up, that it goes to trial. It's going to get dismissed if the NFL suspends him, which means that that's going to trigger. You don't really care about the money this year because the money this year is already spent. But 2025 off the books, 2026 off the books. Those 2 years would be off the books if Deshaun Watson gets suspended by the NFL via the personal conduct policy, because that is right there in bold letters in the contract. If he gets suspended via the personal conduct policy, he has to relinquish all of that money that is due to him in the future. And the Browns could back that up to the union and say, hey, we got precedent for this. And the union will fight a little bit. They might even appeal the suspension. But if the suspension doesn't get appealed by, we know this process far too well, unfortunately. But if the suspension doesn't get appealed, and we know that ultimately Roger Goodell has veto power over the appeal. And also, remember, you can't appeal that the suspension is happening in general. You can only appeal the amount of games that you're getting suspended, right? Like, that is the key thing. So if Deshaun Watson gets suspended, whether it's for 4 games or whether it's 8 games or whether it's 1 game or whether it's 2 games, it doesn't matter. The Browns have that on the table where they can void the contract. So the length of the suspension is the only thing that can matter with the appeal, in my understanding of it. Deshaun could try to say that the league doesn't have this kind of power to suspend him, but it's not really going to go anywhere because he's not the first person to try to do that, and he won't be the last person, and it never goes well because the courts have already decided the NFL does have this kind of power over their employees. So that, you put that all together, in 2 weeks we'll know how likely it is that Deshaun Watson gets suspended. Right now, I think it's like a 25% chance he gets suspended. But if we get 2 weeks from now and they conduct that interview, it becomes a push to a lean towards getting suspended at that point. And once he gets suspended, the Browns could decide immediately, okay, well, we're done. Right? That could be we could be talking about before the bye week. The Browns have cut ties completely. That's how fast the process can move on a suspension, potentially. Sometimes the NFL drags their feet in situations like this. Sometimes the NFL is really quick on stuff like this. Given the high-profile nature of this, they're going to handle this quickly, in my opinion. I don't think the NFL wants this to drag out. So that is where Deshaun Watson is at. It's bad news for Deshaun Watson. I don't know if it's bad news for the Cleveland Browns, quite frankly. Again, we discussed this. Deshaun Watson's level of play has not been great. And one of the things that has followed him throughout his run in Cleveland is whenever something about this case pops up, his level of play always dips to historically bad levels. And that being the case right now doesn't make me confident he's going to play good football. Right. I think he's going to be nothing like he was in 2023, especially in the Baltimore game and the Tennessee game. I just find it hard to believe, knowing everything I know about how this situation has gone with Deshaun Watson this year. Again, I want to believe coming into the season that he would be much better because, again, I thought 2023 was promising. But this situation being this prominent this early in the season, and knowing that he does not deal with this situation well when it comes to his play on the field, it doesn't make me confident. Now, what does make you feel a lot better is that both the Browns' starting tackles finally came back to practice this week. Jed Wills, Jack Conklin back at practice. I think they practiced fully. So that's really good news. We've been hearing about a lot of people hitting the injury report, and that's not been great. But Jed Wills back at practice, Jack Conklin back at practice. All of that stuff is fine and good. Deshaun Watson keeps getting worse as far as his personal case is considered, but I don't know how bad that's going to be overall for the Cleveland Browns, considering if this is what his level of play is going to be, then it really ain't going to hurt them for him not to play. It might even benefit them if he continues to put up 9 QBRs. So that is what's going on. It's my take on the thing. I'm happy that Jed is back at practice. We saw that the Browns need to have a healthy offensive line, especially this week going up against a Jacksonville defensive line that's very underrated in my opinion. Deshaun Watson, we'll see how he bounces back this week. We'll see if he's able to focus on football this week. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough week for him to focus. I mean, every day we've been talking about another thing breaking in this case that looks worse for him. So it's going to be a tough one for him to focus. And unfortunately for him, his back's against the wall already, and he can't afford another bad game because, suspension or not, if he plays like that again, you might just have to ask him to leave for a little bit or not start anymore at the very least, because the team cannot survive 9 QBRs or 12 QBRs or 20 QBR. You need him to be a normal NFL quarterback at the very least. And the fact that we're at that point with the guy that's supposed to be a franchise changer, it's just unfortunate and disappointing that we're here. But that's where we're at. We'll see what they do Sunday. And I'm going to preview the game Sunday with a lot of really good people from Jacksonville. So looking forward to that. But that's the update. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.